There's a ton of advice about starting creative projects out there, and there's way less talk about finishing them, which is weird because when it comes to comics, finishing is the actual marathon. Drawing's the first part of it, right? Getting the thing into the world, readable, coherent, and not actively embarrassing is, where the real work starts. I spent years making, publishing, and promoting my own comics before I finished my graphic novel. I had books like Trouble Guts and Noir, Pages of Eight, projects with friends like The Black Wraith, shout out to Jamie Gamble. None of it was wasted time, it was practice. And in the brutal way artists have to be honest with themselves, I wasn't yet creating at the level I wanted encoding Bushido to be, at least not yet. That's definitely not very Gary Vaynerchuk stop wasting your life energy, is it? I love Gary, but it is my life to waste. So at the end of 2017, I finally started my graphic novel, right after finishing my personal anthology, Pages of Eight. The title was a play on Pieces of Eight, but it mostly referred to the structure, 3 genres, 8 pages per story, 24 pages total. The first story was War of the Beast. Imagine Game of Thrones meets Beauty and the Beast. Just to be clear, it wasn't a romance. I wanted to experiment with fantasy themes and the imagery, organic design, lavish colors. This heavy masculine feminine contrast in that book, and I loved working on it. It was practice in grandeur. The second story, Tell the Veil, was my weird reimagining of Frankenstein, but set in Japan, in the future. Think Akira meets Vogue. Total left field for me, and you could say it was a contrarian take on the hypersexualization of women and a lot of indie comics, as in, I can show this to my mother and not freak her out. This was practice and restraint. I'm probably not the best person to speak authoritatively about that topic, but I also don't think people are exactly lining up because of how I draw women. You can connect the dots yourself. Captive Remnant, the last story, was basically a glorified excuse for me to draw dragons and robots. 12-year-old me was thrilled, but it was also a strange take on The Most Dangerous Game. It's where intelligent species hunt each other on an alien world, at least in my book. So, growth, technically. When I finished encoding Bushido, I expected some kind of emotional payoff. Pride, relief, closure, something cinematic. I spent all of my free time on it, designing dozens of objects, characters, places, vehicles, costumes, everything. I drew every line, colored every page, every cover. Everything you do before a comic ever actually sees print. But when it was done, I felt mostly exhaustion. Emotionally, creatively, everything. It was a 2.5-year long sustained effort. And by the end, I didn't even want to look at the book or read it. That felt wrong at first, but it turns out it's pretty common. Finishing didn't feel like victory. It felt like the end of a long obligation. 2.5-year long obligation. But what was really valuable at the end of all that was knowing I could finish something like that. Without, going completely insane. I put some distance between myself and the book for a while. I created nothing. I just hung out. I lived like a human being. And when I eventually looked back at the work, I felt like someone else made it. Honestly, it was an out-of-body experience. Like, holy cow, I did that? How did that even happen? Your imposter voice says it's not good enough. But the part of you that knows what it took to get there at all starts clapping. That slow, emotional movie clap that builds into, a big, well, in my case, maybe not a huge crowd. But still, I had proof. Real proof that I could tackle a long-form, epic-scale project and not lose my mind. A lot of creatives never get that. They talk about projects they're working on for years. Ideas they'll come back to someday, but ambitions shrink quietly over time. Finishing something gives you a different kind of confidence. That said, there was a cost. Because I finished the book during COVID, lockdown like everybody else, I spent a lot of time alone with that book. I started thinking about all the movies I didn't get to see in theaters, even with COVID, or without COVID. Concerts I didn't go to, birthdays I missed. I missed my own 50th birthday. I didn't celebrate it. After the book was done, I wasn't asking, what do I make next? I was asking, how do I make anything at all without burning out? Like everybody's asking these days. That question pulled me away from chasing big outputs and towards something quieter, building the infrastructure that actually supports creative work. And that shift, and every YouTube thumbnail says this, and I hate saying it, but it's true. That changed everything.